So Iwata has talked a lot recently about expanding the Nintendo brand and being an entertainment company rather than a video game company, and Nintendo may be preparing to take that to the next big step. Iwata told investors that Nintendo is considering extending its licensing business to films and video content. So we've been hearing a lot of rumblings about this for a while. Sony trying to secure rights to a bunch of Nintendo films, and Netflix supposedly making a Zelda series. But this is by far the biggest hint, and the one straight from the horse's mouth, that we've seen that Nintendo is interested in making its franchises more than just games, but also these really prominent multimedia franchises.
I mean, it does definitely call to mind the Netflix rumors. It almost makes you wonder whether they were sort of based on the idea that Nintendo's approaching people, but maybe not based on an actual idea that was going forward. Maybe people at Netflix were talking about wanting to do a Zelda series.
And approaching, yeah.
But it is clearly in the realm of possibility, and I guess it's a matter of time if they're really starting to take it seriously.
Well, I think that if they play their cards right, this could really, really work well for them. Nintendo, I think, is second only to Disney in terms of having a really, really strong lineup of IP in one company. And really the only reason that they don't beat Disney on that front is because Disney's been buying up companies like Pixar, Lucasfilm, Marvel. But anyway, so I'm healthily skeptical, but I'm also very optimistic that between mobile, movies, merchandising, theme parks, and all this other stuff that they're doing with their franchises, that we could really see a big reemergence of Nintendo mania in this broader mass culture and not just in gamers.
Yeah, well, it's especially encouraging to look at the recent comic book movie culture, because comic books have always been this kind of small niche market compared to movies, and yet you have all these comic book properties that are just exploding. They're exploding at the box office, which is just goes to show that licensing stuff out can be more powerful than the source material.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of big potential for this. Obviously, Nintendo, they have to get a partner or multiple filmmaking partners that are going to do a good job that does justice to these. Pixar. Yeah, exactly. That does justice to these characters while also, doing a good job of bringing them to the TV or movie theater format. But I think a big problem Nintendo has with trying to expand their audience is that you're seeing a lot of kids these days. They're not, playing DS. They're playing on their phone or their tablet, so they're not being introduced to these characters at a young age, like Mario and Link and Donkey Kong.
They're coming to mobile now, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's definitely why I think mobile is a good approach, but I also think films is another way to do that, another way to get young kids interested, because a huge part of Nintendo's charm is just, like, their characters, and you keep coming back to Nintendo games for the nostalgia, but if you have a generation of kids that's not being introduced to these characters at a young age like we were, then
they won't have that nostalgia.
Yeah, they're not lifelong Nintendo customers, but in particular, I think a Smash Bros. Film, which we've discussed before, would be fantastic because that introduces, millions of people to basically every character in Nintendo's lineup. And, everyone's going to come away with, like, a different favorite from the film, and, they're going to want to play those games. So I think...
Well, what I could really imagine is a sort of build-up to that, like Marvel did over the last 10 years, and then culminating in the Avengers.
Right.
Is doing, like, a Mario movie, a Zelda movie, a Pikmin or whatever movie, a Mother movie, which, by the way, would be amazing. Studio Ghibli, make it happen.
Yes.
But, having these sorts of things come out and then have it culminate in a Smash Bros. Movie that's really, like, the big cinematic event of the generation, where all of these super popular movies converge into one, but then they also promote some other, like, movie franchises, video game franchises that would have accompanying films. But, the smaller things, like maybe Ice Climbers or something like that.
Yeah, I like that you used the term Nintendo Mania, where it's, Nintendo has the chance to be this cultural phenomenon again, instead of just, this gaming company that
right,
because they
really were a cultural phenomenon in the late 80s, and it really died down. It's, once Sega hit, then Nintendo has just been sort of shrinking and shrinking ever since. In culture, anyway.
Yeah, they have been shrinking. And it's not just the characters, too. I think it's their game universes have kind of fallen out of the public consciousness. And that's something that kind of gets overlooked when people talk about licensing, is they tend to focus on characters, when in reality It's not just Marvel characters that are having a resurgence, it's the Marvel universe that's having a resurgence.
Right.
And especially since Nintendo comes from a video game background, where the game universe is paramount to the experience. It's very important to how people experience the IP. It has to be more than just characters, and Nintendo has to be feeding into it more than just their characters.
Yeah, you bring up Marvel, and early on they had some big hits because they used really well-known characters like Iron Man with these big charismatic personalities, and they had brand recognition. But then after they built up just the whole, you go to the theater to see Marvel movies thing, after they got the hype going for Marvel, then now they can just throw out any character, even lesser known ones, like Guardians of the Galaxy
Ant-Man.
is something that barely, Ant-Man, but Guardians of the Galaxy was the big hit of the year, and that's an IP that almost no one's ever heard of. And now we've got
Right.
Ant-Man coming out and Doctor Strange and things like that. And with Nintendo, it could be the same kind of deal where if you can build up this Nintendo film brand, then you can start bringing popularity to some of these lesser-known Nintendo characters, just because people will want to see the films or buy the games because that Nintendo brand has its worth back. It's got that, Nintendo mania again from the 80s.
Hello everybody, thank you for listening to this Nintendo Week clip, NWC. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to us here on YouTube for more highlights and discussion videos from Nintendo Week podcast, or subscribe to us on iTunes for weekly breakdowns of all your Nintendo news, discussion segments on subjects, games, and more, and tons of other features. Thanks for listening, and we will see you tomorrow with another NWC.